Hi, I'm Jason Perkins, and today I'm going to be giving a demo of VCF's Xerox 8010 Star. First of all, I wanted to show the actual size of this thing. So this is the main cabinet of the Star 8010 workstation. For reference, this is a 3.5-inch disc. This is an 8-inch disc, and then a regular Sharpie. So it is not a small system. On the front of the machine, there is a maintenance panel with some 7-segment displays that give the current status of the machine, a reset, alternate boot, and your power switch. It has a Shugart 8-inch floppy drive, which holds 600 kilobytes. Wheel this back under here so that it's out of the way. All right. The graphical interface that the Star uses is called Viewpoint and is arguably the first commercial graphical user interface. Certainly there were ones that existed before this. This was really the first one meant for public consumption. It's often been said that Apple copied Xerox and the ideas that the Star had with the Lisa, and certainly a lot of people who worked on the software on this moved to Apple and developed the software for the Lisa. But I don't think that's entirely fair to say, because while certainly there are concepts that were invented on this system that the Lisa implemented, there are enough differences and innovations between these two systems that they each stand on their own. So, first thing I'd like to show you on the Star is on that diskette I have a document and I want to edit it. So I need to retrieve the file from the disk. Before I go into the graphical user interface, the first thing I need to show you is the keyboard of the Xerox 8010, because it's very integral to how the system works.
So we should mention to everyone, you might see us slowing the video down and speeding up. The Xerox system used a very, very, very strange refresh rate. So we are slowing the video down intentionally as we zoom in so that you don't have as many artifacts. So it may seem a little weird while you're watching his hands move, but trust me, it makes it a lot easier to see. Yeah. We'll switch it back when we zoom out. Yeah, it's a
38.5 hertz interlaced display. With two phosphors, one of which is long persistence. So in person, the screen does not look this green. It's a paper white screen. So on the keyboard, you see we have the normal typewriter keys, and then off to the side there are these clusters of function keys. And these are critical for the operation of the system. When you're using the computer, you'll select an object, a file, text, and then operate on it with these function keys, which are like delete, copy, move, properties, skip next, font, margin, stop. So the functions to make the computer work are on the keyboard. They're not on the screen. So we need to get our floppy drive. On the Star Viewpoint operating system, all of your software and system utilities live inside the directory. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up and go into the workstation node. go into my local devices, and then here's my floppy drive. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to push the copy key on the keyboard, and then this bar at the top of the screen is not a menu bar. It is an information bar and occasionally has error dialogues in it. So if you see, hopefully you can read that, it says, please select a destination. And my mouse cursor is changed to this arrow. So if I move over here and click, I now have a floppy drive icon on my desktop. But I don't want it there, so I want to move it. There is no click and drag. I can't click and drag this. So to move the icon, I have to press on it, push the move key on the keyboard, which is here on the side, and then again my cursor changes. Please select a destination, and then I can move the floppy disk icon where I want it. So I'm going to close this window out, open my floppy drive, and here is the list of files that are on that disk. Someone will probably tell me that I'm doing this wrong, but as far as I can tell, you can't edit documents that are on a floppy disk. You have to copy them off to the desktop first. So I'll do the same thing again. Click on the file, copy, select destination, point. The system is now copying the file off of the diskette, and there it is. So I will close my floppy. The Show Properties key on the keyboard is one that you'll use a lot. So I'm going to push that, and that will bring up a Properties window. And in this case, this is how we would rename this document. If I wanted to call it Demo Document Live, I could do so. And then hit Apply, and you'll see the name change. Well, no, it didn't because it cut off. It's too long. But anyway, let's open this up. You can have overlapping windows in Viewpoint, and you can drag them around. So I'm going to drag this just up here to the corner. Notice in the information bar, I've got a helpful button up on destination. So if I release that, my window will move. If I right-click, I can resize the window to make it a different size, and that's all well and good. Inside of this document, this black rectangle is a graphics frame. Graphics have to go in a graphics frame. You can't just put them into a document. And you might say, great, how do I put the graphics frame in the document? It used to be that you could go to the office supply store and they had these like carbon transfer sheets with like shapes and stuff, and you'd rub on it on your paper and it would transfer that onto the other paper. And they use that paradigm on the Star, where in this basic transfer sheet I've got all these various shapes. So if I want to add a box into this, I can grab this box shape. I can choose copy on the keyboard. Oops. Oh, I didn't open this document for editing. Let me do that. When you open a document, first of all, it's in read-only mode. So, copy, paste. I don't like where that is, so I'm going to press move. I can move it around. Now I want to resize it. So the function keys that are on the top of the keyboard are also labeled on the screen now as soft keys. So I want to stretch this direction, and then click there, stretch, go down a little bit, move it, okay, good. So there's a little box. If I want to change the line style or the fill, I can do that. Properties key, this property sheet now has things related to that box, so I can do that. Click done. And if I wanted to add some text inside the box, you have to click on the corner of a window to activate it, which is kind of interesting. I can copy this text frame, paste that in. Oops, I'm not typing. Click on this, move, get my destination. There we go. So now we have the fox going over the lazy dog. Let's say I wanted to take this and move it to the bottom of the document. Let's select it, push the move key, and click where I want it. And it actually did it. Sometimes it doesn't actually repaint the screen when you do that, which that took me about an hour and a half to figure out why it wasn't working, because it was working. Yeah, so I moved it, but it doesn't show it. Unfortunately, the system is slow enough, they can't always update in real time, so you have to go to one of these little menus at the top and choose to redisplay. A repaging, as they call it. If I release that, it will go blank for a moment while it figures out what it wants to do, and we've moved our graphic. So now I'd like to show you a similar operation on the Lisa. We'll wake her up. I've got a document on this disk. If I put it in, the system will automatically mount the disk and resume the document that I had open at the time. I'm not going to worry about that right now though. I'll just set that aside. So here's another little sample document. So if I want to insert a graphic here, I need to copy paste it in. So I need to create it in the drawing package. In both of these systems, there is no file new. You take a blank, empty document template and make a copy of it. On the Xerox, you have to click on it, use the copy key on the keyboard. On the Lisa, you can click on it and say, tear off stationery, or just double click. It's a very different interaction where on the Xerox, it's almost like right hand, left hand, is each one is doing different parts of the operation. And on the Lisa, everything is done simply with the mouse. And the keyboard has no function keys on it. Well, I guess it's got a command key, but there are no predefined function keys on the Lisa keyboard. So we tore off a copy of our Lisa Draw document. I had started to prepare this earlier, and inside of Lisa Draw we get kind of a familiar palette of tools. So we can draw a box, again, not touching the keyboard to move it around. Fill menu, let's make it look like that. And then we can add some text. And move it there. That's good. I can select all. I can group all of these things together as one object. I can take my object, copy it, switch back to the other document I was working on with the desk menu. Edit, paste. And you see that it also redrew the whole document right away. I didn't need to issue any specific command. I've also created a few other little business graphics type things in this with the Lisa software. You can see all these vector-based images will redraw as you scroll. Scrolling complicated pictures is definitely not fast on Lisa. But there's a pie chart generating application, which actually, to create that, I used the pie chart application and then pasted it into the drawing program to pull this particular wedge out. And then this was done in the spreadsheet. And that was all that was easily copy pasted into a document. So in the lead up to this event, I had a number of people who were new to the Lisa. They'd never used one before. And I asked them to sit down at the machine and create a document with text and an illustration, and gave very little other instruction. And everyone was able to do it, including our roommate, who I think was 6 beers in at the time, and it took him about 10 minutes. So the refinements that Apple did, building upon concepts started with the Star, really makes this software, I think, a big iteration compared to this earlier system. Want to move to Q&A?
Sure, we can.
Yeah, I've got the Discord up here.
Yeah, we got some questions coming in. Oh, cool. So first of all, we have a question. What is the resolution of the Xerox? It looks surprisingly high resolution.
The Xerox is it is 1024 by 809. And the screen is set up such that there's the viewable area of the screen. And then beyond that, there is a border texture which can be defined so that the screen is borderless. The whole screen is illuminated, but there's only a center section that is actually able to display data.
Okay, we have another question. What year, again, was the Xerox Star from? And what year was the Lisa from? So how long from that to that?
The Xerox Star is built upon concepts and done by the same team that did the Xerox Alto of 1972. The Star shipped in 1981. I'm sure development started at some point prior to that. I don't know exactly when. Development on the Lisa started in 1979, and it was originally going to be a text-based interface. But when Apple was invited to view the Smalltalk system at Xerox and see the concept of Windows and the mouse pointer, Lisa was changed to a graphical interface, and then actually I think it was like 6 months before the Lisa shipped, the interface, the filer interface was changed to this one that we're now familiar with that is still kind of common today. So. Okay,
there's a question about networking. Basically, I guess the Xerox has Ethernet.
Yes.
What kind of networking was available for the Apple? Did it have, for the Lisa, did it have Ethernet? What did it have? And
so that's actually an important thing. The Star was the first computer to have 10 megabit Ethernet. on the back, there's an AUI port. So you can, you could plug this standard transceiver into the back of this system and cable it into a modern twisted pair Ethernet switch. It's called a AUI module, I believe. And there were various types of this depending on the physical cabling that you would use. The Lisa internally to Apple had an Ethernet-like network and network cards. That never shipped. I believe they were very close. They had, the hardware was done, and they used it internal to Apple and at the factory where they produced the systems. The hardware project was scrapped. The software side of that became AppleTalk, and then was implemented over the serial port of the Lisa and subsequent Macintoshes.
Okay, a second part of that question was, can either of them be used as a file server for other systems?
Yes, so running the Lisa Office system, no. This, as it shipped, the Lisa is a standalone system. It has a terminal application. You can do text, copy paste text and whatnot. But there is no like file server or networking. That was planned but never actually released. I don't believe that in this configuration the Xerox would be a file server. It would be a client. The same hardware running different software connected and maybe connected to additional disks could be used as a file server. But if you're running Viewpoint, I don't believe that this will act as a file server, although someone might correct me. I'm not 100% sure on that.
So someone just had a comment. They said, can't help the feeling if you had an e-paper computer screen, it wouldn't look too dissimilar, about the same speed of other slow updates instead of slow screen refresh.
Yeah, the Lisa is a 5 megahertz 68,000. The Star does not have a microprocessor. Because Xerox was so far ahead of everyone else with what they were trying to do, powerful microprocessors hadn't been invented yet. And so this has 4-bit AMD processors in it, running microcode to stitch them together into a 16-bit processor. And amongst that and all other things, this has about the processing power of a Mac Plus. It's about a Mac Plus, which is more processing power than a Lisa.
Now, how much memory did it have, and how much memory did the Lisa have, and what's the CPU of the Lisa?
So the Star has 768K of RAM. This particular one, I think you could order
1981.
in 1981. I think you could order it with less. This particular one is fully optioned. The Lisa in 1983 with the 5 megahertz 68,000 shipped with 1 megabyte of RAM. Which, again, think some of the other presentations, we had people showing Commodore 64s from this time period, which had 64 kilobytes of RAM. Both of these systems were hugely expensive, and the RAM was a significant portion of that. In 1983, the RAM alone in a Lisa cost Apple about $5,000, just the parts.
So another question is more, I guess, personal to you. How long did it take for you to get proficiency in using the GUI on each of them?
So the Lisa, I'll quote the comment of my husband, if you've used a classic Mac OS, system 7, 8, 9, the Lisa is very familiar. Really the only difference is that it's document-centric, so you're tearing off copies of stationery instead of opening an application and choosing file menu. The Star took me a little while. Fortunately, our friends at the Living Computer Museum developed an excellent Star emulator, and I was able to spend a fair bit of time with that using the interface and also watching some of the demos that the Star team has given that are available on YouTube. So I'm by no means an expert on the Star interface today. I know enough to work my way around. It's been quite a few hours to get to this point. It took me about an hour and a half to figure out how to move the text or the graphics frame from here to here.
Okay, wow, we have a bunch of questions coming in. First question is, did the Star have peer-to-peer networking?
I honestly can't answer that. I think I might have to backtrack what I said earlier. I'm thinking back to the demo that Xerox gave at the Computer Human Interface Conference in 1998. I don't know. I know that they had, Xerox had extensive networking set up, file servers, print servers. It was very easy to send like you could take to print a file on the Xerox. You would take your document, you'd choose copy, and then the destination is you click on the printer icon. Unfortunately, so Xerox likes to carefully control their assets and hopefully have monthly recurring costs on them. And the Star is no exception. Everything on the Star is licensed with specific license keys, and I don't know if we're missing the software or I haven't been entering the license key properly. So, like if I select this text, so you left click at the beginning of where you want to select, and then right click at the end. I'm going to choose properties, and this is the property sheet for that text. Let's say I wanted to make that text bold, right? That's pretty easy. I would click on bold here, and Corey, if you could pull in on this line here. When I click apply, you'll see what happens. If I click apply, oops, we're not licensed for bold. So there is a lot more functionality in this system that this particular instance doesn't have right now.
Okay, well, we've got a few more questions. Let me just pull out here.
Sure.
So let me read these off. So we've got what kind of hard drive is in the Xerox? Capacity? Is the whole OS on a disk, or where's the OS stored? And I guess one more question to that. I guess I'm going to combine two questions. Are we running a flash drive or a real hard drive? And you know, who supplied it?
Yep. So yeah, those are very related questions. The system had an SA1000 interface 8-inch hard drive in it. I believe you could order a 10 meg, a 60 meg, or an 83 megabyte drive. This system had, I want to say it was a 63 meg drive in it when we got it. It might have been the 83. It does not have that currently. We are using one of David Gesswine's MFM emulator boards, which is based on the BeagleBone computer, which has solid state storage on it. So we are using an emulated hard disk on this system. And I also need to mention that David has been extremely important in getting this system going. I would not be able to get this demo without the work that he did. So, and I guess for clarity's sake, this Lisa is also running a more modern hard disk. It's not solid state, but it is noticeably faster than the Apple 10 megabyte.
And quieter.
And quite a bit quieter. Yes, you can hear me clearly.
If we actually had the Lisa with the original drive, the noise that would be created by that drive, you probably wouldn't hear anything in the
Yeah.
room. It's rather loud. And it's interesting that was intended for an office environment.
Yeah.
Someone did have a question about the hardware on the Star. Did it have blitter circuitry, do you know? Or did it not do that in hardware? It did it in software?
Blitter circuitry. I am not familiar with what that is. I do. So does does there have blitter circuitry? The loadable. Yeah, it's everything on the Star is in microcode. So one of the first things, there's a minimal boot ROM, and then the actual. I don't know exactly where the delineation is, and I don't want to misspeak, but all of the code all the things that make this work are microcode. It's not so much hardware and TTL logic like the Lisa. I don't know if that code comes from disk or from ROM more on the Star 8010.
On the Lisa, it would have been in ROM because they had a
Yes.
toolbox.
Yes. Yeah. Well, some of it's in ROM. Some of it is also loaded for disk. Like if you boot a Lisa into MathWorks, it loads the Macintosh ROMs into RAM memory and then executes them. So, essentially.
So I have a couple of questions that have came in. Number one, do we have any hardware upgrade plans for the system? Someone said his system, but this system actually is the
Yes.
system from the VCF museum.
Yes.
So you can come in, but then obviously
More normal
with
times.
the COVID restrictions of how many people can be in the museum,
Mhm.
and come in and actually work on this system if you wanted to.
And,
So we
and
do have,
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have the only one of these that is currently on public display that works.
I believe that is correct, and that the public in touch obviously will give you some assistance. We'll turn it on and everything.
Yes.
So I can tell you, I don't think we have any upgrade plans, as from what I
I
understand,
mean, I don't really think
other than a
that.
mouse pad.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually another important distinction. I'm glad you brought that up. So. I wish I could insert some pictures I took of this. I'll pop them in the Discord. The Xerox mouse, this particular one was made by Alps Electric, and it is a beautiful piece of mechanical engineering inside. It's machined aluminum. It has a steel ball bearing, and it's all machined aluminum, clamped together, steel rollers supported on steel caged ball bearings. It has these encoder drums with the finest little wires that touch the drum to sense as it rotates, and it looks like it might have been hand soldered. An amazing bit of craftsmanship in this mouse. You'll also notice you can't, to take this apart to clean it, you have to completely disassemble it. And I would do that, but it is very fragile and I don't want to risk damaging it. VCF when we got this system, we didn't have a mouse, and we were fortunate that someone donated one to us, and we greatly appreciate that. These were quite expensive to make. The Apple mouse is made out of injection molded plastic, has the ring that you can rotate to dump the ball out, has rollers that are plastic on metal shafts with no bearing that go into an injection molded plastic frame and have LED opto interrupters, the interrupter wheels. This cost Apple, I think, about $40 to make. I could be misremembering, but this was something that was cheap enough to put on everyone's desk. This is an amazing bit of machining and craftsmanship that is very delicate, sensitive to dirt, and difficult to clean. So, yeah, I forget exactly how I got on that tangent, but, oh, hardware upgrades. I don't think there really are any hardware upgrades to do to this system. I think it's about at its maximum configuration now. There was a later version of this system called the Daybreak, which was it's essentially the same computer shrunken down into fewer chips in a smaller cabinet, but with some other various peripheral upgrades. It's got some additional processing for peripherals, but at its core, it's still the same micro-coded CPU interpreting the Mesa object-oriented programming language, which is what this is written in, that's a language that Xerox developed. The Lisa software is, I think, a mix of Pascal and 68,000 assembly.
Mostly Pascal. That was a big change, I think,
With the Mac.
Macintosh.
That's how it was faster.
Right. Was because the Macintosh was RAM restricted. The Macintosh, they wrote everything in machine code as best as they could.
Yeah.
To be a lot smaller.
The Lisa,
higher level language and the amount of RAM, they could do a lot of work in Pascal, which wasn't as efficient from a code perspective, but it was way more efficient for the developers themselves.
Very flexible.
Okay, so we have a question about, I guess this is more, someone was wondering, in 2020 Science Advance is optimizing compilers. If it would be possible to do the same thing as it does right now, but with faster redraws and operations in general. I would say the emulator, right?
So, I mean, yes. The issue is that with both of these systems, that the software is still pretty close to the metal, right? And for example, this machine, the Lisa, has an 8 megahertz rated chip in it. The 68,000 is rated 8 megahertz, but it only runs at 5 for various reasons during development. But you can't easily speed that up in the Lisa Office system because that 5 megahertz clock is also what drives the video and the floppy access. So all these things are interrelated. So you can't speed up one part of it and not have it have issues. The same way on the Xerox. The graphics on this is bit banged out by the processor, and so the micro-coded processor has like a list of. Hopefully, you have watched the Apollo guidance computer videos from Curious Mark on YouTube and seen how the Apollo guidance computer had a number of tasks that it would run and spend so much time on each task. The Xerox does that too, and one of those tasks is draw a scan line on the CRT. So you can't speed up the processor without it throwing everything else off. And in fact, the Dark Star emulator has an option where if you have a very fast computer, a limit clock speed option, because if it runs too fast, the system will crash.
Wonderful. So I guess you've tried that.
I have not, but that's what the very helpful help file said that.
So I guess one final question we have, this will be our last question, is someone really wants to know, because Xerox was kind of a big company.
Yes.
What division or what part of Xerox, because there's software and hardware and there's the interface, what division actually produced this and sold it, and who is the real intended audience or the real intended purchaser of the product? So the Xerox, all of the, as far as I know, and I am, as Corey will tell you, I'm more of an expert on the Lisa system, and I know some things about the Xerox. So as I recall, all of this was done at the Palo Alto Research Center by I think the team had a name. It might have been Advanced Products Team. I could be misremembering that. The intended audience for this, actually the intended audience for both of these systems is the same. It was the knowledge worker, the person who is not a typist, who is not clerical,
but is someone who is dealing with ideas and preparing presentations and charts and solving business process issues. So both of these systems were targeted at that knowledge worker segment. And Xerox actually, if you search on YouTube, has a really excellent presentation about the Star and how they target it at knowledge workers.
Well, thank you. This has been really, really great and very informative. And then we're getting things from people like, this is the first time they've actually ever seen one of these working. So I think that it's amazing that, you know, you're able to share it and really just show the difference. Because I'm with you. Mm-hmm. People ask me all the time, you know, did Apple steal from Xerox?
Yeah.
And, you know,
and everyone says, oh yeah, Apple stole from Xerox, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and it's in movies and whatnot. And yes, there are elements and paradigms that are implemented in the Lisa that are present on the Xerox. But I did a demo earlier for my YouTube channel, and Andy then asked me, hey, can you do this? Where I compared the Lisa Office system to DRI's GEM. And in that instance, DRI GEM kind of copied some of the look and feel of the Apple system, but without the depth of functionality that was behind that look and feel. In this case, we have some similar paradigms, some similar graphics stuff, but the depth of functionality behind it is different on the two systems. So I guess that's my point, is that inspired by, yes, copied exactly. This is not a Xerox of this.
Thank you very much. It's not a Xerox of that.
Yep.
So thank you. And you know, we're going to move on to our next, which is really something I always love watching. Ian Primus repairing CRT, so he's going to talk CRT repair. So thank you very much, and we're done.